Trace Gallagher live in our West Coast newsroom with the latest fallout tonight. Hi, Trace.
Hi, Martha. Much of the media world seems to agree the story told by the woman who calls herself Grace about her date with comedian Aziz Ansari certainly does not rise to the level of Harvey Weinstein-type misconduct. An op-ed by the Washington Post says the Aziz Ansari tale isn't about a powerful person trying to humiliate and subjugate someone who wants nothing more than to chase their dreams. Instead, quoting, it's about a date that went badly, one that did not live up to the expectations of the woman involved. Caitlin Flanagan of The Atlantic went further, calling the woman's story, quote, 3,000 words of revenge porn, intended not to validate her account as much as it is to hurt and humiliate Ansari. But critics wonder if the woman is guilty of trying to hurt Ansari or simply guilty of bad timing. In other words, would she have been as roundly criticized at the height of the Me Too movement? For example, 3 months ago, when the Huffington Post seemed to cast aspersions on all men, saying this about Me Too, quoting, the social media campaign is, of course, intended as a wake-up call for men. If every woman you know has been harassed or assaulted, then every man you know has likely made a woman feel unsafe. And it should be noted that not everyone is giving Ansari a pass. An LA Times opinion contributor tweeted, quote, I was finally able to read the account of the date with Aziz Ansari. From the described events, he appears to have no understanding whatsoever of sexual consent, nor do his defenders, it seems. That said, the Me Too narrative is now consistently being challenged. Actress Catherine Deneuve denounced the movement because she believes people who did not deserve to be condemned are facing the same consequences as sex offenders. And former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice offered this. Watch.
Let's not turn women into snowflakes. Let's not infantilize women.
Analysts say it appears the temperature of the Me Too movement has come down a notch. Instead of the focus being directed solely at the alleged bad behavior of men, the accusations themselves are now getting a second look. Martha.
Trace, thank you. Ben Shapiro, editor-in-chief of The Daily Wire, and Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist and a Fox News contributor. So, I guess the question is, have we reached a tipping point in this discussion where due process enters the discussion and the assumption that every woman must be believed, which is what everyone was admonished to adhere to in the early stages of this, Molly, seem to be questioned at this point?
Well, it's about time if we have reached a tipping point, because there's nothing different about this woman's story than many of these other stories that we have heard from the Me Too movement. You just mentioned the standard that all women must be believed. There's this other standard where the only thing that you have to worry about is whether a woman feels uncomfortable. And these were the judgments that we were using to determine whether we should take part in the Me Too panic. It was a panic, and it was this attempt to come up with some kind of sexual morality after we have thrown off all objective sexual morality. And it's clearly not going so well. I mean, these are not good ways to govern our behavior, even if it's true that men and women should think about forming relationships before they have sex.
There's a novel idea. Ben, you wrote about this quite a bit, and you talked about her assertion that he should have picked up on her nonverbal cues. I mean, perhaps the strongest nonverbal cue is, grabbing your jacket and walking out the door, which women have been doing for hundreds of years. She didn't make that choice here.
Yeah, I mean, there were some nonverbal cues that were given, including getting completely naked in his apartment and then performing sex acts multiple times on him. If I were Aziz Ansari, I would be thinking that's a pretty solid nonverbal cue that you might be into things. I have a hard time believing that she really expects Aziz Ansari, or that anyone from Me Too expects men to be mind readers. And this is the problem. It's one thing to say that we should believe women about objective, verifiable facts, or even just objective views of what happened. My hand went here, and then my head went here, that kind of stuff. But when you're talking about we have to believe all women's subjective perceptions of events that are often very messy, that are very confusing, that are very chaotic, and in which the feelings conflict in one person. Forget about both people, that conflict for a woman. I mean, this woman was enthusiastic at the beginning of the date. By the next morning, she was talking about how terrible it was. Is it the job of men to now decide when women are capable of consent? I thought the entire purpose of the feminist movement was to say that women are supposed to be the mistresses of their own consent, that it's not up to a man to say, listen, I don't think it's possible for you to give consent right now. I don't think this sex is in your best interest, and I don't think that we ought to be doing this. That would be mansplaining to the woman, presumably. So I guess men are caught between the rock and the hard place of, if we say no, and the woman actually is giving nonverbal cues that say yes, then we're mansplaining. But if she's giving nonverbal cues that we think say yes, but she thinks say no, then I guess we're guilty of what? Sexual assault or sexual abuse?
I hear you. I don't want to let you guys go without playing this SOT. This is a totally different story. This is about the U.S. Olympic team and other women who were trained by Larry Nassar, who was a trainer. He has now been convicted on 7 counts of sexual assault, and now the victims are telling their side of the story. Watch this.
I want the nightmares of you coming into my room to go away. I want to be able to go out in public without seeing someone that looks like you and get so afraid that I have to suddenly leave.
I remember laying there frozen stiff on the table, utterly mortified, confused and scared.
Little girls don't stay little forever. They grow into strong women that return to destroy your world.
Now, there are a number of very well-known gymnasts and all of these young women who you see here who were abused by the person who was supposed to be their trainer, the person who was looking out for them. He gave them what he called the treatment, the special treatment, and they were terrified, as you can tell. Michaela Maroney, the famous U.S. team gymnast, settled with the U.S. Gymnastics Association. And as part of that settlement, she's not allowed to speak out at this, or she'll be fined $100,000 in doing so. Ben, your thoughts, and then we'll go to Molly.
I mean, I'll put up some money right now, and we should start a fund to make sure that she can speak out however often she wants on this particular topic. I mean, if Me Too is to stand for anything, it's to stand for the idea that the entire culture, men, women, everybody, look at instances of actual sexual assault and not only condemn them, but want to make women free to talk about them more openly.
Molly?
This man is beneath contempt, and it is just disgusting to hear what he put these women through and how many of these young girls went through this. It's just appalling that there aren't more people that were aware of what was going on until this year. Having said that, one of the few things that victims can get sometimes are settlements where they get some financial compensation for the horrors that they have gone through. And it's very noble to question non-disclosure agreements for how they silence victims, but also we have to be careful that we don't take away one of the few things that sometimes victims can get out of a very horrible situation. And if you attack non-disclosure agreements, it can actually make it hard for women to get justice in the future, too. It's a difficult situation.
Victim of child abuse ought to be able to speak her mind. And I think Chrissy Teigen and others, and Ben Shapiro, have volunteered to pay that $100,000 fine so that she can speak out. Thank you very much to both of you. Great to see you both tonight.
Thanks.